Hello, welcome to the New Stack Makers, a podcast where we talk about at-scale application development, deployment, and management. Hey, it's Alex Williams of the New Stack here at ClouDNativeCon, Kubecon Berlin, and joining me for this afternoon interview is Kris Nova. How are you?
Doing great today. It's a very exciting day here at the conference, so lots going on, and it's been beautiful weather here in Berlin, so couldn't be happier.
And you're with Deis, and tell us about your job there. What do you do there?
I work on the workflow team, so I'm a senior software engineer there, and I just help contribute to workflow and bring that to life and to fruition. And then I'm also involved with some of our other projects as well. We kind of do like a collaborative environment.
So what have you been doing here at the event? What have been some of the main things you've been doing?
Lots of networking. I've been working at our booth. Today was Deis SOC Day, so that was exciting. Honestly, a lot of networking, and we had a meeting for SIG AWS on Tuesday. I don't know, it's gone by really fast. So.
Yeah, so I'd like to talk about the SIG AWS, meeting that you had, and I'd also like to talk with you about COPS, right?
Okay.
Kubernetes operations, right?
Sure.
And so let's start with the AWS effort. It seems like it's really picking up momentum. Is that true or not? How are you quantifying what's actually happening in that group?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think it's interesting, right? Like AWS it's a popular cloud for various reasons, and Kubernetes natively came from Google. So getting Kubernetes up and running on AWS is, in my mind, sort of like a natural evolution of the project, and really speaks to its maturity. So I don't know if I would say that the community is necessarily like growing faster, but I do think what we're noticing is the SIG is becoming more of an avenue for communication.
How so?
I just think that it's growing with attendance and involvement from a lot of folks.
So who are you seeing? So who's getting involved? Who is involved?
So the SIG is ran by myself, Justin Santa Barbara. He's one of the maintainers of COPS and does a lot of work on Kubernetes Core, and Mackenzie Burnett from CoreOS. So we're the three organizers, and really all we do...
Where's Justin from?
Justin, I don't know if he would want me telling people this or not, but he does live in America.
All right.
So we help organize it, and really like our role there is to help kind of guide the community and help offer channels for people to have important conversations and plan sort of where we are and what's next as a community.
So tell me about that planning and where you are right now.
So we have a lot of stuff in the mix right now. I think probably the hot topic agenda item is working on getting some community-driven AMIs into the AWS marketplace. This was a great idea that was, I think, originally brought up by the folks at Weave. And we're pushing that through SIG AWS right now, and we were able to get a sort of blessing from CNCF that they were going to help foster and be the face of the AWS marketplace image that we were hosting. That the point of the image is basically to give a starting point for Kubernetes on AWS.
A starting point. So you've decided. So is it up on the marketplace now?
Nope. So we're still in planning right now. So we're deciding how we're going to do this thing. We're setting the requirements list of what needs to be in the image, drawing boundaries around that, and figuring out how we're going to bring this thing to life.
So tell us about that, where you are with things and planning, and what the requirements are that you're making part of it.
So the update really is that, we just said we're going to do it. This is something that we want to focus on our last call, and so our next call is going to actually begin to start actually making tangible agenda items to move forward with the process and really figure out kind of what's next and what this thing's going to look like. So it's a clockwork. People are always working on it, but we're still in the beginning stages.
So when you're thinking about this, what are you thinking about doing? What are you trying to achieve in the first iterations?
I think the first iteration, obviously, like with most software, especially in Kubernetes, is almost a proof of concept. It's almost an experiment at that point to sort of demonstrate that this can be done. As far as success criteria for the image, like what makes this thing do what we want it to, I think we're still hammering that out and figuring out what those boundaries are and where we're going to draw success.
Okay, so what? Tell me a little bit more about who else you're seeing involved in this project. I mean, are you the types of companies you're seeing involved who are interested in this? CoreOS is one, right?
Obviously. I see a lot of involvement, obviously, from Weave. I think it was their idea. I know the folks at Heptio have shown some interest in it. Off the top of my head, I'm sure there's others on the call. It's interesting dynamic on the call. It's not very company driven or company focused. Of course, there's always familiar faces that are obviously from certain places, but we really try to keep the calls like focused on what's in the best interest of the software. And to me, like, that's a reflection of the Kubernetes community in general. So that's something I'm really fond of, and I really kind of appreciate that spirit, why we are going through this whole process.
Why are you so interested in this this effort around AWS? Well, what is it drives you?
What is it that drives me? It's not done yet. That's why this is exciting for me. Literally, I have a chance to be a part of like changing the course of open source software history here.
How so? Well, why?
I mean, already like we've done a lot with the SIG, and I mean, from when I started till now, like if a user goes to Google and types in Kubernetes on AWS, check that today and then wait 2 weeks, it'll change again, and then that's a reflection of like the work we're doing and the folks that are all contributing to this greater effort.
So how does this? I mean, but changing the course of open source software, is a big statement. How would this change the course of open source software?
Well, I think the fact that it is happening, we do have people who are running on AWS. That's something that, I guess let me back up. This is happening and people are running on AWS, but the community is what's changing here. And what the community can offer to get people in the door is really what I view as like the importance of this whole effort or this whole endeavor on my end, which is like, how do I as a user, like, I wake up in the morning and I say to myself, I want to run Kubernetes on AWS today. How do I do that? What does that look like? And how easy and how flexible do we make that? And what are our concerns? And how do we exchange complexity for opinions?
So what are the complexities that you're seeing with running Kubernetes on AWS?
It is so unique. I mean, I could go into great detail and be super granular about like every little weird nuance we see, but I think in general it's applying infrastructure to a cloud, and that infrastructure needs to be configured just right in the first place to even get the cluster up and running. But even more so, a lot of the work we're seeing is different configurations, and then of course, how do we scale them? How big do we make our subnets? What are the instance sizes? What if we need more instances? What if I want unique permutations of, I want 2 smalls but 4 larges, and I want certain apps to run on certain images? So the complexities of AWS really are captured in AWS itself, which is, it's going to be as complex as the cloud.
So for example, the configuration, what are some of the more noteworthy nuances?
The configuration. So the configuration of the cluster, or I guess the infrastructure, I should say. One of the big things that we really kind of overcame at first was this concept of how do we secure our clusters, and this was a big nuance and something I really helped lead. Basically, the idea is that when we first started, everything was publicly available on the internet. If you created a cluster, anybody in the world could potentially reach your cluster. And we were relying on Kubernetes security, which is great. I love it, and they're doing a great job for access to the cluster. So a concern for some folks was, but we want to lock down our cluster, and we want to prevent the outside world from accessing that. So looking at how do we have private topologies in AWS, and how do we lock these subnets down and keep people from getting TCP traffic into our cluster for SLA reasons, for HIPAA reasons, and there's anything under the sun, really.
Right. So this obviously is a massive project then. I mean, there's just again, it's like the complexities of the cloud, all kind of I mean, this is an infrastructure that's built for Google, right? And like, I think that pretty much encapsulates. Now you're trying to put that what's built for Google on AWS.
Right, and no, I think what's great about Kubernetes is, I mean, 1.6 was released yesterday, so like it's constantly changing and it's constantly updating. So not only was it a massive undertaking to bootstrap this project, but it was also a massive undertaking, and still is, to maintain it and keep it growing. I mean, it seems like every day I wake up and there's one other feature that I'm starting to take into consideration mentally as we move forward with Kubernetes on AWS.
So, I expect that there's no participation from AWS on something like this?
So no, they're great. We have a guy from AWS, Brandon, who's been joining the calls, and we've been getting some really wonderful feedback from them. And for as far as I can tell, it seems like a great effort.
So what kind of things does AWS help with then?
So they've really helped with the AMI project I mentioned earlier, and helped guiding our decisions around that, and giving us information about what's the best way to get an AMI in there, how do we host it, who's going to be responsible for it, and they help sort of guide that thinking and answer some of those questions for us as we were going through the process. I think two phone calls ago. So.
Okay. So then when do you expect that AMI to be on AWS?
I'm not going to commit to a date by any means, but we're working on it, and soon.
This year?
As soon as we can.
Second quarter, third quarter of this year? The calendar year?
Yeah, in the second quarter, third quarter probably. But again, it's going to be at the mercy of the community and at the speed at which the SIG can operate.
Awesome. So you also work, I know it as COPS, right? The Kubernetes operator. Tell us about that. What is that?
It's a Kubernetes deployment tool that started out and really became big, so to speak, in my eyes, with a lot of the work that that Justin and a lot of other people, Kris Love, for instance, have put into running Kubernetes on AWS.
Okay, so that's the COPS group then. Okay. So is are those that's part and parcel then of the SIG that you had the other day? Then,
so yeah, it's always a constant struggle of ours to make sure that SIG AWS doesn't turn into SIG COPS, and that we keep like an unopinionated, sort of like ambiguous perspective on Kubernetes running in AWS. But COPS is a tool I work on as well that has some opinions and makes some assumptions for the users that you are welcome to agree or disagree with.
So what are you working else? What are you working on at Deis? What are some of the projects you're working?
So at Deis right now, I am working on the Deis workflow team, and I am working on doing some new feature work for an experimental feature that allows for replacement of our internal router with a traditional Kubernetes ingress.
Okay.
Right. So that was like sort of was my first project there. If it hasn't merged yet, I think it'll probably be merged right when we get back from Kubecon, and folks will be able to start playing with it and using it, and actually using native ingress controllers with the Deis workflow tool.
Okay. So native ingress controllers with the workflow tool. So what does that mean? To tell me a little bit what that means.
So the history here is when workflow started out, the guys I work with on the team, there was no concept of ingress at the time. So we had to implement, or they had to implement, I should say, they're a homegrown ingress solution. The community has gone and implemented ingress on their own and defined the standard, and so this new feature allows us to take advantage of the new community standard of using Kubernetes ingress.
Okay, and that will be part. When is that being launched? When is that being released?
So our goal is to get it into the next release of workflow as an experimental feature. My personal goal is to get some feedback from the community on how they think it's working, what they like about it, what they don't like about it, how it could be better, and then eventually figure out if it's going to remain an experimental feature or if it's actually going to graduate into a non-experimental feature that we claim is stable and that we support long term.
Great. So, we're here at this event. It's all really being focused on Kubecon. What have been some of the more exciting things that you've seen announced here, or sessions that you've attended? What has been interesting for you?
So this whole conference has been great. I think I'm a community person, and to me, just being able to meet a lot of the people I work with in SIG AWS and SIG COPS face to face that's always the win for me. Getting to spend coding time behind a terminal with these guys is great, and I think a lot of the stuff the CNCF has done to bring this conference is wonderful. I wouldn't change a thing, and I can't wait for the next one.
What sessions have you attended that you were particularly interested in?
I really enjoyed the keynotes from this morning. They were great. Joe's keynote was fabulous. Michelle's was also great.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, Kris, thank you for taking some time to talk. I wanted to get kind of a brief update on the efforts around AWS. It's obviously, I think, a topic of of interest to us, just because of you tried developing a platform that was built on Google for AWS is something that I can't really ever recall seeing happen. So best of luck with that. We look forward to keeping in touch.
Absolutely.
Listen to more episodes of the New Stack Makers at thenewstack.io/podcast. Please rate and review us on iTunes, like us on YouTube, and follow us on SoundCloud. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.